This video is all about xTool Creative Space software. We are going to dive deep into the newest version of the software. I'm going to give you a full tutorial and help you make projects using XCS software. Hey there, I'm Sarah. You're watching Creative Ramblings. We talk a lot about lasers on this channel. If you are a laser crafter, you may want to consider subscribing. I'm sure I have videos here that could help you in your creative journey. Today, we are talking about xTool Creative Space, or XCS. This is the software that powers every xTool laser, and it recently got an update. So we are going to look at version 2.1.12. It is a pretty big update from previous versions. There are a lot of cool features, and we're going to look at them all. So if you are new to xTool, this is a great video to watch before you get started. If you have just upgraded your software and you're a little overwhelmed, you're going to get something out of this too. So I'm using my M1 Ultra for this tutorial. The actual software part of this can apply to any xTool machine that you have. I chose the M1 Ultra because it has a marking system and not a camera. And I find that the marking system just has a couple extra steps, so I thought I would show you that here. The marking system also applies to the S1 if you have that laser. We are going to make a 2-layer ornament cut out of basswood, and we're going to engrave it as well. So that'll help us use a couple different features in the software and help you get a hang of it. The file that I'm using is linked down in the description. It's from Creative Fabrica if you want to check it out. So let's talk about how I have this set up. This is the M1 Ultra. It is on a riser right now. I have my honeycomb base on the inside, and I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to vent it out this window behind me and just place the basswood into the machine. I like to hook this laser up to my computer because I have a desktop computer right over there, so it is really easy to just hook it up with a USB, but you can also connect your machines with Wi-Fi. This is xTool Creative Space. If you do not have the latest version, when you open it, you will be prompted to update, or you can go to xTool.com, click on software, and you can download the software from there. So on the screen, you're going to find a lot of different things. You can find your previous projects you've worked on. You can find suggested projects. There are a lot of things here that you can click on and try to make on your own. It's going to give you all of the details and instructions on how to make them. It's a really good place to start. Up in the top right corner, we're going to click on New Project. Up in the right-hand corner, you're going to see a machine. My machine is already connected because I turned it on and it is plugged in with a USB cord. If this green light is not on, you're going to click on this little button here that says Switch Device or Connect Device. If you have more than one, it's going to show you your other xTool machines. You can disconnect, you can connect from here, or you can add a brand new device if you've never connected before. That second button here is Device Settings. It's going to give you all kinds of different information here. There are some changes you can make if you want to update some things about your machines. Lots of details you can find in here. So that is under Device Settings. And this final one here is going to give you some user guides on how to use the software. So there's some good stuff to find right here. The first thing we want to do is mark off our working space using the xTool, using the M1 Ultra. So up here, there's a couple different buttons up here. This first one here that says New, you can actually use your smartphone and the xTool app to take a photo of your material, and it will upload a photo into XCS. We are going to use the marking system. So if I click on this, I am able to pick what shape my wood is. My wood is a rectangle, so we're going to click on that. And I am going to go over to my machine, and I am going to place the crosshairs, the red crosshairs, on the top left, and then I'm going to push the button to mark that spot. Then I'm going to move on down to the bottom right and mark a button, or push the button to mark that spot. So now I have my rectangle. And I like to move the laser back to the center of the material before I close the lid. Now I can end the marking and click Done. And this is my working area that I have. The working area for the M1 Ultra is this white grid space that we have. So my material is placed a little bit outside of that, but that's okay. I'm not going to use all of the material. I just need to make sure that my design is inside the marked box, but also on the grid white area. If you have a machine with a camera, this would be the time where you would refresh your machine and it would take a picture of what's on your base plate. If you want to mark something different, you can come up on the top here and you can preview it, you can delete it, and you can remark it. The next thing I want to do is measure the thickness of the material. There's a little button right up here. I can click Auto Measure. Depending on the machine, you may have a quick measure or an auto measure, but auto measure is just going to have the laser measure the thickness of the material. It's important to have the laser crosshairs over the material, so that's why I like to leave it in the middle of the machine. So now I have a marked area, I have a thickness, and my thickness is in inches. If you wanted to work in millimeters, because if it's in inches now, that means all of my measurements are going to be in inches, I can come over to this X in the top left corner, go into Settings, and I can switch between millimeters and inches very easily. So there are options over here on the left side of the screen, and that's really all we see right now. There's nothing on the right, there's really not a lot on the top. So this top button up here is how we import an image. So we're going to bring in that design file that I got from Creative Fabrica so we can work with it. You may see this come up when you import your SVG. Yes, I want to scale it to fit on the canvas. So down here on the right, I can scale my canvas down just so I can see the whole thing. This is my SVG design, and when I click on it, I get a bunch of new options up on the top here. So these first two options, this X and Y, is where it's placed on the screen. So as I move this around, those numbers are going to change. Then we have the width and the height. So I can change that by going up and down like this, or I can just enter numbers here. Right now, this aspect ratio is locked. So if I change the width, the height is going to change accordingly. If I unlock that and change the width, the height doesn't change. And I don't really want to do that. I want to keep it a nice circle. So I'm going to keep that aspect ratio locked. We can rotate here, so I could type in 90 degrees and rotate. I can also use this button right here and rotate it any way I want myself. That comes in handy when we are moving it around on the wood and want to get it all in the right spot. So there's a couple other things up here. Let's see, this one will flip if we want to reflect them a little bit differently. And these other ones are for when you have multiple pieces, so we'll get to that in a moment. Up here give you really precise ways to play around with this design. So the first one is editing nodes. Nodes are all the different points along your design that you cut on. So if I wanted to simplify this or take out some of these pieces, I could just click on one and delete it. I could add one. I can line up my nodes. This gets really, really detailed. You may never need this, but knowing that it's here is really, really helpful. So we're not going to use this at all right now. I'm just going to hit done. The other thing you can do is edit a compound. So there are a lot of pieces involved in this SVG here. So if I edit the compound, it's going to break them up. So I can pull this away and it breaks up my pieces. I'm just going to undo that so it goes back in place. If you brought in an SVG that you only wanted parts of it, you can go into edit your compound and take out the parts that you don't want. Releasing will just break apart all of these pieces for me without editing. I can just break them apart and take what I want. So let's talk about the outline feature. I can come over here and I can create an outline of my design. I can make it really big. I can make it really small. This would be great if you wanted a double layer ornament, but you wanted the back layer to maybe be a little bit bigger than the front layer. So if I click confirm, I can pull this out and I have this nice back layer here and I have the front layer here. But I actually want these two to be the same size. So we're going to do this a little bit differently. I am going to right click and just duplicate this. And now I have two. Now I'm going to use this release button up here. And I'm going to be able to pull away just the outline. I can highlight all this other stuff and delete it. So now I have a solid ornament for the back and a design for the front. I want to make sure these line up. So if I kind of put them over the top of each other, I highlight and select everything, we can use these buttons. So these are layering buttons. If you have a lot of different layers, you can bring some to the front or move them to the back. This alignment feature is really, really helpful. So I want to align everything in the center. And if I click that, I can see that my back is perfectly sized for the front. So I'm going to move this back out of the way. We're not going to use that right now. I want to add a name to the front of this ornament. So that is our next button on the left here. That is text. So if I click on text and I put it here, I can type a name. And then more options come up on top here. So I still have a lot of the same ones that I had with the SVG, but now I have font options. There are some xTool fonts that are in here, and as I just hover over them, I can see how it's going to look with the name that I have written. And then if I scroll down, way down here under System Typefaces, this is everything that's installed on my computer. With the M1 Ultra, you can write in a font with pens, and these single line fonts are what you want to use for that. They just write single lines, and they're going to work really well with your pens. So I want something that is kind of a script font that kind of looks like cursive. So we're going to do this dancing script here. Then I can play around. I could do bold or medium or whatever I want to do. I can change the size of my font by going like this, or I can type it in up here. Let's make this really big. When you use a script font, each letter will be cut out or engraved separately. Because they are overlapping on these points here where the R meets the A, I don't want them to overlap. I want them to be joined together. So once I have my name written exactly how I want it, I can come up here and hit weld, and it brings everything together. The weld button is your friend when you are cutting out words. So now I can size that appropriately because I want it to go right in here on the bottom of this ornament. And I think that's good right there. So let's keep walking down the left here. We have a shape button here. It's a little box. It allows you to make a line, a rectangle, or a circle. If you click on it, you can make it any size and then manipulate how you want up on top. This next little quill pen looking icon is a vector. So it allows you to draw vectors, and you can get really detailed here by holding down your mouse. And I can draw one point, and then as I drag it down to the other and hold down my mouse button, I can curve that around and come up and draw another one and curve that around and then connect them. And I've got a really cool shape that I can play with. So if you need to freeform some things, that vector pen is going to be your friend. Then we have more shapes. This is a lot of different shapes and graphics, kind of like clip art that is made by xTool. And if you click on these little arrows, it's going to bring a ton of stuff up. So you can pop these into your design just by clicking them, and you can cut or engrave them, manipulate them how you want. But there's a lot of stuff there that you can work with. To make all of this go away, you just click on the icon again. Then we have ArtMind. We're going to click on this real quick. It's going to take us to another screen. This is an AI generator. So if you type in the description of an image you want, it's going to bring something up for you, or you can use some of the ones that have already been created. Kind of a fun thing to play around with. To get out of this and back to our screen, we're going to X out in the top right corner. Don't close your software, just close ArtMind. Now down here, we have some applications. So to use these applications, the first thing I'm going to do is go back up here. I have a rectangle. I am going to draw a little rectangle. With that rectangle highlighted, let's move it over a little bit here so we can see it. I click on the applications. There's a couple different things I can do. Grid array allows me to make a grid of something if you needed to make a whole bunch of something. Circular array, same thing, but it kind of spins it around and makes really cool stuff. It rotates everything. Then we have material test array. I have a whole video on this if you want to take a look on how to make one, but if you click material test array, it brings up settings. So I could test this out on my wood with different power and different speed to see how it's going to cut or engrave. Always make sure when you're using any of these that you already have that rectangle created, and then you can use these. Next up is code generation. This one is pretty cool. So let's say you want to engrave a QR code for your business. So I am going to paste my YouTube channel right here. I am going to click save, and I have a QR code. I can engrave that on a piece of wood, and if I were to scan this, it would take me to that URL that I just put in. And finally, we have batch fill. This is not applicable on the M1 Ultra, but it works really well like on the F1 Ultra or something with a conveyor. And it allows you to create one design and then smart fill it across all your different pieces in your machine. Continuing down on the bottom, we have our pointer, which we've been using to move all of our different things around here. The hand tool, if you click on that, it allows you to move the canvas around. So if you want to be zoomed in real far, but you still want to be able to see everything, you can use that hand tool. Then we have layers. Layers has been around in XCS for a while, but it just got more detailed with this one. So one of the reasons you might want to use layers is if I know for sure that I want to engrave this first, then I want to cut this piece out, then I want to cut this piece out, and I want them to go in that order. So I can move these around to different layers. So the first one up here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to make that one blue just because it's easier to see. Then I'm going to make this one green and I'm going to leave that one red. And if I put them in this order, they are going to start out with engrave, cut, cut. If you do nothing, xTool does default to engraving first and then cutting. So you don't always have to do this, but if you have something really intricate, you may want to play around with that. Sometimes it's nice if you have a lot of different engraving pieces, you can put all of your engraving on one layer and all of your cutting on one layer. So I'm going to close layers and we are going to move up to the very, very top. So where it says M1 Ultra Untitled, that is the title of this project file that I'm working with. Within this project, I have one canvas. If I click on canvas, I can add a second one. So it's still within the same project, but what this allows me to do is if I, again, had something really detailed where I was working on maybe canvas 1 is my blank ornament, but then canvas 2, I have 20 different names that I'm ready to engrave. They're all sized and they're all correct, but I'm going to keep those on canvas 2. So if you have a larger design you're working with, canvases might be your friend. We're going to delete that canvas because we don't need it. And if I click here again, it'll go away. Finally, on the top, you see here that we are lasering on a flat surface. If I click on this, a bunch of options are going to come up. The M1 Ultra has lots of options of different functions it can use. So I can be on a flat surface. I can use the rotary. I can use all the different drawings and blade cutting and inkjet or the screen printer. You may find that you have a rotary or conveyor depending on your piece up there. So always make sure you're in the right mode. So we're still going to stay on the flat surface there. Now we're going to move all the way over to the right-hand side of the screen. We're going to start at the very top and we're going to define our material. So I am using 3mm basswood. If I don't have the material here that I see that I want to use, I can click on this. I am taken to the full material list and I can sort by all kinds of different things. I can sort by machine, I can sort by type, and I am probably going to find my piece in here. But we're going to X out of this because if I go into the original user-defined material, I'm just going to click on 3mm basswood. This is going to give me some preset settings that xTool has tested and knows work with your machine. Next down we have the machine. We've already connected that. And down here, if I click off, you'll see what it's set to, and it's just set to score, which we don't want. If I click on this green layer, which is the back layer, it is set to output, which means the machine is going to operate that. If I turn that off, nothing is going to happen with this green layer. So if for some reason you're not cutting, make sure output is on. And then I want to cut this back layer. And xTool here, if I click on this one click set, it's going to tell me the best options. And this is recommending that I use 90% power with a speed of 5. So I'm going to go with their recommended settings. If you wanted to tune this in or fine tune it, you can always do that down here. You can do more passes too. Down below this, we have a couple settings, kerf and lower the focus, that you probably don't need in your first projects, but as you get more intricate, you may need to use these. So kerf is referring to the actual size of the point of your laser. And if we turn that on, we're going to lower it just a little bit. And again, you can change this in here, but we're not going to use that for this particular project. The next is lowering the focus. If I turn that on, it will lower the focus by however many millimeters I set. If you are cutting something really thick, you may end up using that option. I would recommend creating your project, and if you're not getting exactly what you want, you can dial in these settings a little bit more. Finally, we have tab generation. Let me turn that off for a second. So if I turn on tab generation, I get a bunch of options here. This was originally set up when machines with conveyors started coming out, and it allows you to have little breaks in your cut so that if your large piece of wood is going through the conveyor, it doesn't just fall off at the end. You can kind of snap it off later. But again, not something we need on this project right here. So I'm going to turn all three of these off and just leave the cut settings on. Now I can go and click on the next layer, set it to cut, and I'm going to pick these same cut settings for this one. And then we want to engrave the name Nora. And I need to move this back up because it needs to be engraved on this piece right here. So we're going to set engrave. Let's look at the one-click set. I could do something super dark. It's recommending a speed of 130 and a power of 40. So we're going to go with the recommended settings for now. This is a 10-watt laser. So if you're working with a 20 or 40, you're going to get different results with different settings. When you are engraving, there are a couple different things you can do here. Lines per centimeter means just that. If your number is higher, there are going to be more lines back and forth per centimeter of engraved work. We're going to leave it set at 120, and we should get something really good there. And this is just how the lines are engraved. If you are doing something really detailed, you may like the look of unidirectional, but most of the time I choose bidirectional. I'm going to highlight both of these, come up to the top, and when I highlight two items, group comes up. So that way, if I move this around, they stay together. This actually brings up one more option that shows up on the top here. It's these little squares that are overlapping. If you have two items that you need to maybe take out the middle or join them together, you can use some of these options to do that. Let's talk about these 4 options really quick because these are kind of important. These are only going to show up on your top toolbar when you have one or more items selected. So I have drawn 4 pairs of 2 circles. The one on the right is on top of the one on the left. So let's see what they do. Let's select the first 2, and we're going to go to this first one. This is Unite. This will combine the 2 circles and take out the stuff in between, so I can cut them out as a whole. This next one here, this is Subtract. So what this does is it takes the first circle and the top one, the item that's on top, and subtracts it from the one down below. This is Unite at Overlap. So it takes those 2 circles and it just leaves behind the piece that is united. And finally, this is subtracted overlap. So when I click that, it brings it together, but it doesn't really do anything when I have these selected until I go over and I set it to engrave. And you can see that it has subtracted. It is the opposite of this one here. It has subtracted the place where they overlap. So I hope that's a good understanding of what those 4 combined options do when you have 2 or more items selected. Now I want to place these in the appropriate place. So I'm going to move them over, kind of conserve some of my wood. And again, I clicked off the SVGs. It gives me exactly what I'm working with on the right. And now I'm going to frame. What framing does is I'm going to walk over to my laser and I'm going to push the silver button, and it's going to draw a rectangle around where it's going to operate. I do this just to make sure that everything is placed appropriately. Then when I'm done and I'm happy with it, I can come back and click Framing Complete. With my framing complete, looking at it on the wood, the only thing I've decided is that I want this to be a little bit smaller. Right now we're looking at a 4-inch ornament. That might be a little large. So I am going to highlight everything and just manually bring it down. If I were to highlight only one at a time, then I'm going to resize it and I'm not going to size the other one. So this means that my ornament is now just under 3 inches. I like that a little bit better. So I can frame one more time. I'm happy where this is. Now it's time to process. So before I process, make sure my machine is on. I'm vented out the window. If you have air assist, that's all ready to go. So a couple things are going to happen here. This red line is the laser trajectory. It tells you exactly what's going to happen first. So the first thing this is going to do is engrave, then it's going to cut, then it's going to come over and cut this one. My estimated time is about 6 minutes, and I can move this up real fast here. I can hit play, and it's going to show me exactly what my laser does. So we engrave first, then it's going to cut, and then it's done. With the M1 Ultra, there are a couple different things you can put into your machine, like an inkjet printer or a pen or a blade. This is just reminding me, hey, you need to have your laser in there, and it already is. It's ready to go. So I am going to hit start. The machine does not start when I do that. I need to walk over to the machine and push the button. This is a safety feature on every xTool laser, and I really like it. I'm also going to make sure that I stay next to the machine or in the same room while it's working. My machine is working in the background. There are a couple things you can do here. I can pause, I can cancel, or if I want to let this project keep going, I can minimize this and go back and work on the project again. So this is a great example to use canvases here. If I am working on, maybe I want to make this ornament, but I'm making 20 different names, I can then start designing the next couple of names that I'm going to cut out. So this allows you to continue working on projects, or I could even come up here on the right, hit file, and create a new project and just start working on this all together. Then I have multiple tabs up here, and if I click on this tab, if I right click, I can rename it. And then just go back and forth between the two projects. The only thing I think we didn't cover up here is this little X on the top. I can do a couple different things up here. We did cover settings. I can open existing projects. I can bring in images this way. I can save. This right here is amazing. If you were to create something in XCS that you really like, you can then export that as an SVG, and you could give it to other people to use. You could sell it. You could use it with your Cricut. SVG files are very versatile. If I want to get back to that processing screen, I can come up here on the right. It's telling me that one job is currently being processed right now, and I can see it right here. It tells me the time left, and I can pause or cancel it from here, so that's not left alone. There is also an emergency stop button, or you could just hit the start button if something's going on with your machine. The job is all done, so I can come up and save this project. I can do that by just clicking this button right here, or I can come into the X, file, and save. then I can close it down.
When the machine is completely done, it's good to just let the fan go and leave the lid closed until that fan shuts off. That is going to help pull any extra smoke out of there. You can hear that it just shut off, so now we can take this out. I really like the honeycomb for something like this because nothing really falls through. So I can just gently push out the cut pieces. Get them all out there. And there we go. There is the top layer. And we have the bottom layer. We can put it together. And after all that designing and education, I can tell you I made a mistake. I didn't cut the hole in the top of there. So when I copied it, I should have left that piece in so the hole can go all the way through. You may get some char on your pieces. If I look at this right now, I can see I got a little bit of char coming off of my fingers. You can use a baby wipe to start and just wipe all of that off. And then you can use wood glue or super glue to put these together, add a little ribbon, and you have a really cute little ornament. Always, always, always pull out your little pieces when you're done. And I know I had one or two that fell in there, so I'm gonna have to pull up my honeycomb and bring those out. You don't wanna leave any debris in here because that could cause a fire when you're doing your next job. So we just walked through every feature available in the newest XCS software. I hope that helped you going forward with your projects. I hope you're feeling a little bit more confident diving in and designing or working with SVGs. If you have an xTool laser, I probably have some tutorials and projects for it. Take a look at the xTool playlist down in the description. And if you have any other questions, drop me a comment. I would love to chat. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.